You might have seen that the rental company Hertz is making a big push to rent EVs. It recently made the news that it's scaling back, selling a lot of those cars it bought a couple of years back and losing a lot of money in the process. As I had to rent a car recently, I thought I'd try a Hertz electric vehicle to understand the experience. Is it as easy as hiring a regular internal combustion engine car? Are there any benefits? What are the problems? And why did my experience end with me crawling down the motorway with no heating in the height of winter? My go-to choice for a rental car in Europe is the smallest car possible. Besides being less expensive to rent, they're also easier to navigate small European roads with parked cars at the side of the road and easier to get into small parking spots. Modern Super Minis are fine at motorway speeds and are not scared by a manual gearbox, which most of them tend to have. But this time I found it was only a little bit more to hire an EV from Hertz, and as I already drive an EV at home, it didn't seem too daunting a prospect. Picking it up was the usual rental experience. The main difference was that the rental agent told me where the charging cables were stored in the car. I was a little concerned I didn't have all the parts when I read this notice next to the charging cables, which of course I only read the first time I wanted to charge the car. I had the two charging cables, one which made an IEC Type 2 connection and one which connected to a regular UK 3-pin socket. I had a key fob, but I wasn't supplied with a recharging fob, whatever that was, so I was a bit concerned I'd be charged for it when I returned the car. Thankfully, that didn't happen. I would have appreciated Hertz giving me more of a walkthrough of how to find and pay for charging locations. I might be used to charging my EV in the USA, but things might work differently in another country. The representative just told me to look for charging places on the built-in sat-nav. When I picked the car up, one thing struck me. When you hire a petrol car, you commonly get the car full of fuel and have to return it full. Hertz have a similar policy for their EVs. You get it at least 80% charged and have to return it with at least 80%. If not, you can choose for Hertz to charge it for you when it's returned, but that was an additional £53. As the total cost to rent the car for a week was £132. That seemed a little excessive, but maybe I'm not aware of UK electricity charging rates. Of course, returning an internal combustion engine full of fuel is a relatively easy task. Just drop by a petrol station, fill up and return. But returning an EV with at least 80% charge requires a bit more planning. The car needs to be returned at a fixed time, so if you're driving a long distance, you need to factor in the time it'll take to charge the car, and you don't know how fast that charger will charge, if there will be a free spot to charge, or if the charger is even working. In my case, I was driving about 40 miles to drop the car back at the airport around 4 AM in the morning. If I charge the car to 100%, it might be at 80% when I get to the airport, but if not, then I'll need to find a place to charge. Hertz gave me the address of the closest place, which was a help, but I can see how paying the additional £53 charge would be worth the convenience. I understand why Hertz would want the car to come back with an 80% charge, of course. They want the car to be ready to rent as soon as I bring it in. But this whole thing could be a bit of a turn-off, especially for EV newbies. That £53 cost would occur whether the car had a 1% charge or a 79% charge. Maybe a better solution would be to put fast chargers in every EV bay at the rental agency and to only charge the customer the amount of electricity that's needed to return it to 80%. But given Hertz's experience with EVs, I can't see them investing to make these changes. I rented a Polestar 2, and while I'm at it, I thought I'd give you my impressions. It's a nice car with definite Volvo overtones, not surprising as Volvo owns about half of the company. There were a few niggles though. I wasn't a fan of the front headrest that forced my head forwards a little, and I couldn't work out how to tilt it backwards. When I first got in the car, there was a mystery warning that kept appearing whilst I was driving. It was a mystery to me, maybe because I just had a long flight, but I've since worked out it was warning me that the passenger wasn't wearing their seatbelt. There wasn't anyone in the passenger seat, it was the weight of my backpack that was causing the warning, but it meant for lots of unwanted beeps and messages just at the time that I was starting to get used to driving an unfamiliar car, following directions and driving on a different side of the road that I'm used to. The key fob wasn't the easiest to use. Polestar have gone the same direction other car companies have gone by using the padlock symbol for the lock and unlock buttons. But at my age, I need reading glasses, and given both are small black icons on a black background, it's impossible for me to see which is which. For a car that's so expensive, they certainly seem to have cheaped out on this bland black box. My EV's charging experience was good, but then I happened to luck out. I stayed with my dad at his residential home, and they have 4 charging points. They're meant for residents, but the people there allowed me to charge using a smart card and I'd be billed later. But getting to the chargers was a little tough, as the car park is often full and people park in the EV charging bays. I completely understand why they do this. Only one resident uses them, so they're rarely used, and those spaces are needed when the car park's full. But charging sometimes involves parking somewhere else, then popping out every so often to see if an EV charging spot has freed up. If EVs become more widespread, every spot will have a charger, and these issues will hopefully become a thing of the past. When you do charge, the information on the Polestar is a little confusing. The car reported the time to charge was 0500. It wasn't clear if this was the time when it would be completed or the number of hours and minutes until it would be completed. There have been studies that show a battery pack can last 20 years or more by charging the battery to no more than 90%, and Tesla have revised that recommendation to generally keeping the charge level between 50% and 80%. A 20-year battery life gives EVs a lifespan more than most internal combustion engine cars, but failing to follow battery guidelines can severely cut the battery's life. This can be seen by looking at the first generation Nissan Leaf. With just a 73-mile range, the car's batteries took a beating, and used cars are now over 10 years old. Some are doing fine, but some not so much. For example, this car is only £2,000, but its original 73-mile range is now just 22 miles, and that's after only doing 58,000 miles. To fix this problem will require installing a new battery, something that can cost more than the car itself, even before installation costs. It's possible to swap the battery pack in the Leaf if you're good at car maintenance, but this is going to be much harder with today's cars that use the battery and its structure as a stressed part of the chassis. Not all EVs have tired batteries though. You can buy a similar Nissan Leaf with a healthy battery for just a little bit more. But all this means that buying a used EV can be a bit of a minefield. The Leaf makes it easy to check the battery's health, as it has a very obvious battery health meter on the dashboard. But on my Tesla Model 3, there's no such indicator. You need to take it to a Tesla service center to find that out, or go into the Tesla service mode that Tesla tells you should only be used by service personnel. The battery health check can then take up to 24 hours to finish. With EV renters not understanding what level they should charge the battery, or having range anxiety, it's maybe understandable that they would ignore recommendations about what level to charge the battery, which means buying an ex-rental EV may not be the best purchase when they come up for sale to private buyers. As I mentioned earlier, I was worried about getting the car returned above the 80% charge rate, as I had to drive some distance in the middle of the night so I could catch my flight. At least traffic wouldn't be a problem. Okay, it's 5 to 3 in the morning, and the car is ready to go. I've got to go 40 something miles. I've got to get to no more than 80%. So hopefully I'm going to hypermile it a bit, maybe go slowly on the motorway and try and get down. The car has been charging overnight, and it's charged to 100%, which isn't ideal for the battery, but we'll see how it goes. And anyway, let's see what happens. Battery level is 100%. We have 280 miles. Best of luck. Well, I'm at the airport, and I actually got diverted off the motorway for a junction because it's the middle of the night. They're doing repairs and things like that, which probably helped the fuel economy a little bit because I was traveling slower. It was a bit worrying whether I was going to make it or not, but as things progressed, I got a little bit more confident. I didn't have the heating on. I didn't have heated seats on, so it says it's 4 degrees C outside, so it's a little nippy. I had my coat and my hat on and things like that. But we ended up making it. So let me just swap over and you can see the actual range. So yeah, we ended up with 86%, range of 240 miles. It said 280 at the start. I've gone just over 40 miles. I did quite a bit of hypermiling. So I was traveling at 60 miles an hour and spending some time traveling behind large lorries to try and get better wind resistance. So it would have been quite stressful if I'd had to take this car to a charging point, which I've never used before, try and put my credit card information in, try and make that work. I haven't tried that before in this country. Thankfully, the place I stayed at had charging, which already got sorted out with a prepaid with a card, which I dealt with. So I haven't had to deal with any other charging infrastructure here. But yeah, a stressful experience renting an electric car. So to the $1 million question, would I rent an EV again? Maybe, if I had a clear path to being able to return it 80% full, or if I was happy to pay the £53 charge. But at the moment, renting an EV requires more forward planning than a petrol or a diesel car. So unless you're after a bigger car for a good price, or you're choosing an EV to help save the planet, today an internal combustion engine car is the easier option. If you think EVs today can be a little challenging, you should have seen how impractical they were in the 1960s. There's a video about 1960s EVs on the right. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.